So this workshop is going to go over how to use the GauchoSpace Gradebook. GauchoSpace Gradebook is definitely one of the more troubling and often misunderstood aspects of GauchoSpace. Hoping that we can give you the tools and at least know where to find answers to how to use the gradebook from this workshop. My co-host today is David McIntosh. David is one of our instructional design assistants. He's very well versed in GauchoSpace. As I go over content today, he's going to be pasting in links to different help articles that reference the gradebook and cover different aspects of it, and making sure I don't skip over any important details. David, you want to give a little background to yourself?
Yeah, I've been a graduate instructional design assistant working for GauchoSpace support. This is going on my 5th year. So as Gus says, I have been doing this for a while. I'm a PhD candidate in the history department, and I've been a TA for the history department for several years. I was an instructor for the writing program for 3 years. And in this fall, I'm going to be TAing in Chicano studies and looking to graduate this June. But suffice to say, I have a lot of experience with working with GauchoSpace and doing exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So again, hopefully we give you all the tools you need for the gradebook, but if questions do come up or you need a consult with us regarding using the gradebook or just want some eyes on your gradebook, if you email help@collaborate.ucsb.edu, you can set up an appointment with one of us. So it'd be someone like David or myself would be able to look at your gradebook and answer any of those questions for you. The format we'll go over today is we've got a mock course that's got a kind of half-built gradebook, and we'll kind of build it according to a mock syllabus we have to kind of give a real-world context to how you build a gradebook. Once we've got the gradebook all set up, we'll kind of go over some other advanced features within the gradebook, and then definitely as questions come up, we'll be available to answer them. But then if you have other questions, we can answer those at the end of the content. I'll also stop the recording once we get through the bulk of our content, and we can kind of have a more open dialogue if anyone's hesitant to want to chat in the recording. So I'll start with sharing my screen here. So this is our kind of mock course we've got. So I'll kind of first start with the syllabus. So course syllabus here. And we have a breakdown of how the scoring for the course is going to go. So in this case, we've got homework assignments that are going to be 30% each, or 30% of the course total, and 10%, breakdown of the course total each. So 10%. And then quizzes are going to be 15% of the course total. And there's 4 of them, but 3 are going to be counted. So 1, we're going to drop the lowest score. And then the attendance is going to count for 5% of the course total. So that's going to be 1 grade item. And then for exams, there's a 50% breakdown. The midterm is going to be 20% of the course total, and the final is going to be 30%. And then we've also got an extra credit, 2% of the course total. So that's kind of the breakdown of this course's gradebook. We've got some pre-built assignments in here. So we can go ahead and look at the gradebook and see how it's set up now. Again, that's this course and then grades. And then to set up the gradebook, you want to click on Gradebook Setup. So in this case, we have some of the components already built out. We've got a homework section with these assignments in there. We've got exams, and we have a midterm, and then we have an attendance, and then we have a series of quizzes here. So what we see with this homework folder icon here, this denotes a category. So a category in the gradebook is basically used to house grade items of the same category. So when we look back at the syllabus, I've got 3 homework assignments that are worth 30%. So this category, in this case, is actually weighted at 35. So we'll need to change that. But what we're lacking right now is a quiz category. So to build a new category, if you scroll to the bottom of the gradebook setup page, you've got these 2 buttons, add a category and add a grade item. So to add a quiz category, I'll just click on add category. Give it a name. I'll just mention the aggregation. We definitely recommend using the natural aggregation. This is just going to allow you to manipulate the weights of categories and grade items within the gradebook. And it's what we found to be the most intuitive and helpful aggregation type within the GauchoSpace. So just keeping it as natural is fine. Give it a name, and then I'll click on Save Changes. All right, so now I've got a category for the quizzes, but all the quizzes are outside the category. So to get them in, I can check these boxes on the right side. And with that, I can click on this drop down for Move Selected Items To, and then I can select the category to move those items into. So in this case, I'll move them into quizzes. All right, so now we're in a bit better spot with our gradebook. We've got the different categories. We're still missing a few things here. So one of them is we're missing the final in the exams category. So just like I made that category down here, I'm going to make a new grade item. And you'll see that this midterm, it has this pencil icon. This just denotes that this is a manual grade item in the gradebook that doesn't have a corresponding activity in GauchoSpace. So this is probably more relevant to, not a remote teaching environment, but say if you had students hand in a final or some other paper assignment that maybe you're grading in Excel, and then you need a placeholder in the gradebook to bring those grades in. That's mainly where you would see a manual grade item used, or if there's any other kind of grade you're trying to give that isn't associated with an activity in GauchoSpace. So to add another one, so in this case, for the final, I'll use a manual grade item as well. So I'll click on Add Grade Item. Give this a name. And then if I expand that, I can see this grade category. And from right here, I can select what category I want to put the grade item in. So I'll put it under exams and then click on Save Changes. Okay, so we're getting a little closer to getting an accurate gradebook. The next thing we're also missing, if we go back to the syllabus, an extra credit grade item. So I'm going to do another manual grade item. You could do this with, say, an assignment, but I'll just do it with a grade item for our needs here. So I'm giving it just the name extra credit. So it would seem like I would want to check this box. Unfortunately, with how the gradebook handles the calculations, you first need to make the grade item, and then you'll be able to come back and mark it as extra credit. So I'll click on Save Changes now. And now I see it at the bottom of the gradebook. So I can go back into it, into the settings, and click on Edit, Edit Settings. And now I can check that box for extra credit. So it recalculates, And now I've got this denotation that this is going to be an extra credit grade item. So again, all these other weights are not going to take this one into account. This will be on top of all the other weighted activities. Right. So now that I've got all the different items I need in the gradebook, I need to do some reorganizing, and the weights aren't exactly what I want. So when I look back here, the homework assignments, I want 30% of that to go for the class total. So with these weights, if you check the box here, and this is checked, you can then manipulate those weights. So for homework, I'll change it to 30. For exams, I want 50. And then attendance, I want 5. So again, I can't change this, but if I click on this checkbox, then that grade weight becomes editable. So I'll put in 5 there. For quizzes, I want them to count for 15%. So I'll check that. Input 15. And then the extra credit was going to be 2%. So that all looks good. So with those changes made, anytime you make any changes to the weights, you'll want to click on Save Changes to apply those weights. And now I see them reflected accordingly. One thing to note with this, changing the weights, if for whatever reason, if I had input 20 here and I ended up with a weighting scheme that didn't add up to 100, then the gradebook is going to try and distribute those out as best it can according to the numbers I do have entered. So just important to make sure that your weights all add up to 100 when you're manipulating them. All right. So,
Gus, do you want to
yeah.
mention what's going on with the homework category there?
Yes, good call. So David's pointing out, I believe, is the points. So these homework assignments, the first one is out of 100 points. The second 2 are out of 60. And that's creating these different weights here. If I wanted to, just make these an even distribution, I could just check these boxes and artificially weight them so they're going to be an equal distribution. Otherwise, if I don't check those, then the weights are going to be basically corresponding to the different point values in that category. So kind of 2 ways to solve this is either manipulating the weights manually, or I could go in and say, change this homework grade to be out of 60. So if I go that route, save changes, I can go into this homework assignment and go to settings. I can go to grade. In this case, I've already given some grades out. That's why I see this rescaling existing grades option. So if you, for whatever reason, you ever need to change the maximum grade for something that you've already given grades to, you'll need to choose if you want to rescale them. So rescale according to this new maximum, or you want to keep the point values that are there, but just change the maximum grade. So I'll go ahead and rescale them as I make this change, and I'll make it change to 60. And then I'll click on Save and Return to Course. And now we see an even distribution of those weights for those assignments. And again, I could have done it this way and just manipulated those weights there. And this is also just more context to the natural aggregation. So with using weights, essentially you're changing the value of assignments and their points associated with them. So if I had kept this at 100 points, but I had changed the weights to be an even distribution, dividing them by 3, then essentially those points don't matter in the same way they would if it was unweighted. So when we get this point value at the bottom, 380, it's really not as, determining a student's grade out of 380 because we're weighing all these different categories and the assignments within them differently. So students don't really need to think about their grade in the context of 380 because certain assignments are going to be weighted a lot heavier and they'll be given a higher percentage value in the grand scheme of the weight or grand scheme of the course total. All right, back to this grading scheme we've got here. So I also have the exams. So I've got 20 and 30 of the course total. So in that case, I will make, right now they're just an even 50-50. So just check. So I'm going to make the midterm worth 40 and the final 60. All right, and save those changes. So getting closer, the next one we see is the quiz category. So there's 4 quizzes, but what we need to do is drop the lowest. So I think this got changed just before I started the workshop, but I'm going to manipulate the quiz a little bit to show an example. So right now, I just made that change, but we've got 4 quizzes, 3 out of 5 points and 1 out of 10. So ordinarily you would go to the edit for the category that you want to drop the lowest for. So quizzes category, I'll click on edit and edit settings. And then I would input the drop the lowest here. You see this is marked, I can't change it right now. So if we go back, this quiz category has 4 items, but they're all different point values. So when that's the case, the system doesn't know which one you want to drop as the lowest because they're not exactly being treated the same with different point values. So I showed you how to change the maximum grade for an assignment up here with that one. For a quiz, if you go into the quiz and then to edit quiz, this maximum grade is what you would want to change. So even though there's 2 questions that come to a total of 10 points, the maximum grade can be whatever you like, and it'll scale these 10 points within the quiz to this maximum grade. So if I wanted to make it out of 100, but I didn't have 100 points to make up the quiz, I could still have the maximum grade be 100, and that score is just going to scale up to 100. So with that saved, I can go back. And then now when I go to edit settings, I can input 1 for drop the lowest. All right, so now looks like we're in good shape. So with that change in mind, there's kind of aesthetically, maybe I want this attendance, since it's just by itself, maybe I want that at the top of the gradebook. To do something like that, you can either, you would need to click on these up and down arrows. This will make the gradebook, this whole screen editable, and then you can move whatever you like wherever you want it to be moved to in the gradebook. So I'll click on these arrows, I get this kind of interesting screen with all these different lines where I can move that attendance activity. So just so it's clear to students, I'll move it to the top. And then, you know, maybe I want the exams category at the bottom. So I can move that here and just have the extra credit icon there. So this is getting closer to what we want as a gradebook. Let me just check our, all right. One other kind of category setting that is worth noting is this include empty grades, what you see here. This is by default the setting in GauchoSpace. So students are going to see their grade based on all the assignments in the gradebook. So, you know, it could be the first week of the quarter and students don't have any grades, but you built out your gradebook and they're going to see a 0 for their grade. If you'd like students to see their grades based on only things that have been completed, you can change that by going into the category. So I'm going to edit settings. And then there's this option for exclude empty grades. So for that category, students are only going to see their course total based on the grades that have been inputted. So if they have an assignment that they never got a grade for, they're only going to see their grade for that category based on what they have gotten a grade for. So this is kind of where we get into, do you want students to see their progress based on what they have completed or what they potentially need to complete in the future? And on that note, when it comes to grading and grading assignments and quizzes, you know, sometimes we're just grading when we see something come in. So it's important that students also see if they didn't complete assignment that they get a 0. So for quizzes and assignments, there's kind of an easy way to do that. If you, in the gradebook, if you go to single view, so you've got this new interface, you can select which group you want to pull up, which user potentially, or the grade item. So in this case, let's say that first homework assignment, I've graded the students who have submitted it, but now I want everyone who hasn't submitted it, I want them to get a 0. So I select that grade item, and then I see this full list of all the students in the course. I see Joe's got a grade, but you know, Paul and Sarah, they haven't submitted this assignment, so I want to give them 0s. So I can click on this perform bulk insert for empty grades, and it's going to insert a value of 0. So with that, I'll click save. And now they've got 0s for that assignment. It's a little more easy to give grades for those assignments as you're grading them when you see a student hasn't submitted it. It's important though with quizzes, especially if your quizzes are automatically graded, that students, you know, get a 0 if they haven't submitted that or haven't completed that quiz. So in this case, you know, it's kind of the opposite. Paul and Sarah completed this, but Joe never took this quiz. So I'm going to perform a bulk insert and insert a 0. And now Joe's got a 0. While we're on this page, I'll also mention this is if you ever need to give a grade change for, say, a quiz in GauchoSpace. So quizzes are generally, if you're not using the essay question, automatically graded. So in this case, we see Sarah got a 4.25, and that's coming directly from the quiz itself. If I decided, you know, Sarah wrote to me, I want to give Sarah those extra 0.75 points, Sarah made a good case and I want to give those points to her, I can click on this override option, and then this becomes editable, and I can put in a 5. I will say that we don't really recommend using this override option because it displays in the gradebook, but it doesn't display in the activity itself. So it's kind of a one-way street. When I put in this override, Sarah's going to see the 5 in the gradebook, but when they open the quiz itself, they're still going to see that old grade because the override is really only applying to the gradebook itself. So that's an important distinction to make. Back to the gradebook itself, we've got it basically according to the syllabus. It's accurate now. Some other features that you might want to take advantage of or just to be aware of is the ability to hide things. So let's say, this final exam, I'm inputting student scores, but I don't want, half the students to know their score and half of them not to. So what I can do is I can click on edit and then hide. And now students aren't going to see this in their view. So I can continue to input grades for that final. And then when I've got all the grades for the entire course in there, and I'm happy with everything how it stands, I can then go back and click on edit and then show. So students aren't some are getting their grades and some aren't. I can kind of control that visibility to my needs. But it is important that you make sure to come back and unhide it if you do hide something. It's generally where we see a lot of confusion is, so students, what they're going to see for their course total, if something is hidden, is basically their grade without that item accounted for. So if I have a huge grade item that's weighted very heavily in the gradebook, but it's hidden, and I've completed all the other assignments and done really well, my grade's going to reflect kind of that current progress and not include that potential other item. So that's just another thing to be wary of for what students are going to see versus what you'll see if you hide something. All right. Moving along here. David, anything I may have skipped over? All right.
No, I believe you've covered everything so far.
Okay. So a couple other features in the gradebook I'll mention here. There's this forecast report. This is basically a way for you as an instructor, and you can also turn it on for students to be able to see their grade hypothetically. So I can even pick a student. It'll input what they've already scored in the gradebook. And then I could, input potential future scores and see how it calculates into their total grade. This isn't something we have turned on for students by default. It would need to be turned on manually by the instructor. Part of the reason for that is that some instructors, do use the gradebook thoroughly and have it well constructed, and others, don't have it super dialed in. And if students start, speculating about their grade based on a gradebook that isn't accurate to how it's going to end up being, we don't want students having that false sense of what their grade's going to be. But if it is something you're interested in having available to your students, if you go to Gradebook Setup and then Course Grade Settings, under Forecast Report, this Enable for Students, you can change the default to yes. And then students will have that option when they open the gradebook to go to the forecast report. I'll also note that these tools, the forecast report, and then I'm going to go over grade history. are advanced tools. So you'll need to have editing turned on and turned advanced tools on here in order to see this forecast report. Another report here is the grade history. This is helpful in case, you know, some mistake is made in grading. Maybe I input zeros and overrid a ton of scores. You know, I can look at that quiz 1. I can just look at the entire history and see all the grade changes that happened in that grade item to each student. So again, if a mistake was made, maybe a bulk insert of some kind, you know, I can see this history, I can download it if I want to, and then kind of assess what needs to be changed in the gradebook to accurately reflect what might have been changed. All right. So another kind of report that I'll mention here is this grade distribution report. So this is something that you can use at the end of the quarter to essentially make a curve for your course. So right here we see kind of basically a normal breakdown of letter grades and the scores associated with them. And here, you know, this course, we don't have a lot of grades for our students, but you can imagine you'd see a distribution of all the different letter grades for the course. And then to apply a curve to the course, you can essentially change these boundaries for each letter grade. And then this green, all the green bars will shift according to this new grading scheme you put in here. And you can kind of adjust those grade boundaries until you get a distribution that you're happy with. And then once you're happy with it, you can change grade letters, click here, and then that'll change it for the entire gradebook and apply those new grade boundaries. Just to be clear, this is something that impacts the entire gradebook, so you can't do it for just a single assignment or a single grade item. This would just apply across the gradebook completely. So something, if you're interested in using, probably best to do it at the very end of the quarter when you've got all the different points entered into the gradebook, and then you want to change the overall distribution. All right. So now I'll just mention this export option. So similarly, if you had gotten your grade distribution to where you want it, and then it's time to submit grades to eGrades, you know, or if you want to just look at, say, a single grade item in Excel or the entire gradebook in Excel, this is how you would do it. So with export and then Excel checked, you know, this is everything in the gradebook. If I want to select just a certain item from it, I can do this, select all or none, and then I can just check the single, maybe I just want to export these quiz scores. So with that, I can click on download, and then I'll open it. So now I've got a, you know, it's got these fields of the first, last name, pronouns, username, email address, perm number, and then this is the midterm, or yeah, the midterm grades. You can imagine much bigger course, will have a lot more information, but so in this case, maybe I wanted to manipulate the grades here. So if I wanted, say, to change Joe's grade for the midterm from 30 to 40, I can just change that to a 40. And then I'll click on save. And then actually I'll need to save it as a CSV file. So just make sure it's saved as a CSV. And then I'll go to import. And I'll select the file. Select that one I just changed. And then I'll upload this file. So just as long as it's a CSV and you've got those different fields, that'll be fine. Then I'll click on upload grades. See kind of a preview of what CSV file I'm importing. The main thing is mapping the perm number to perm number. That's the default. And then the grade item mappings, this is important just that this is the column for the grade I entered. I changed Joe's grade for the midterm. And then I just need to make sure I'm mapping it to the midterm that's already in the gradebook. So midterm selected, it's gonna bring whatever I put in for midterm into the midterm in the gradebook. And then I'll click on upload grades. Update. So grade import success. And then I can, if I wanted to review the change I made, if I go to midterm and I see Joe's grade is changed to a 40. So that's something you can do with any grade item that you want to, change. Maybe you want to put in a host of different changes. You would first want to do an export to get kind of that base CSV file, and then import using those steps I just went through, and just mapping it to the grade item you're looking to make the change for. And those are most.
I believe it's probably worth mentioning, Gus, that the export feature is also useful for creating a file to then use in eGrades.
Right, yeah. So in the export, you'll probably want to select a letter as an option to display as well in the export. And then with that, you can download it, and then that'll be exactly what you need to import into eGrades. All right. So I also, just coming back to the gradebook setup, hiding items in the gradebook, I mentioned you click on edit and hide. You'll notice that option isn't available for a quiz. The quiz visibility settings are actually within the quiz itself. So if I go into this quiz and then click on edit settings, under review options, there's a host of different checkboxes of what you want available to students at different times. So, obviously pertinent when you're, have an open quiz versus closed quiz. So I don't have a closed time for this, but if I did, I check that, then I can check these items for after the quiz is closed. That would be available to students. But similarly, if I don't want any of that information to be shown to students, I can uncheck all these. Let's say you have essay questions in the quiz and multiple choice, so those grades are going to change as you grade those essay questions. You might want to hold off on showing those points to students until those point values are finalized, and then you can come back into the quiz, check all these boxes, and then it would become visible to students in the gradebook. So that's the basic rundown we have for the gradebook. Definitely open to questions. David, any other points I may have skimmed over a little too fast? All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording and then open up the open up the room for any other questions people might have.